Hey, everybody. Hey, all ladies and gentlemen. So, welcome to the intro to real estate investing, or you could call it real estate investing 101. Okay, so today I'm going to explain to you and show you how to purchase your first real estate investment. Okay, so first, let's start off of sourcing your investment property. There are a lot of ways to go about doing that. Most people that I work with, including myself, follow a couple different principles. Okay, so you can go through online using Redfin Zillow, and you can find properties that have been on the market a long time, and you can approach the seller directly and just be like, hey, would you be willing to take a much lower offer in your home, and kind of start the conversation that way. And if they are, then great. You can see what that looks like and negotiate a deal and put it under contract, and you can buy a property like that. Technically, it is on market, but yeah, you can also work with build out a network of agents. Agents are your friend, and you can have them sourcing both on market and off market deals for you in the areas that you want to buy in and invest in, and at the price points that make sense for you. And something where, for your first one, I'd either do something that's relatively easy to modify or change, what we call in the industry cosmetic repairs. It's basically just stuff like flooring and paint, maybe a bathroom remodel, something relatively simple. Maybe changing some doors, changing some trim out in your home. And, we want to make it relatively simple, have a lower barrier to entry. And also, we want it to be financeable if possible. Financeable by traditional funding, so regular home loans, so conventional home loans. And that's ideally what we want if we can find it. Now, another way you could go about finding it is through wholesalers. Now, you can network and you can source, you can Google a bunch of wholesalers in your area. You can go to networking events, real estate events, and you can just network and chat with wholesalers in your area, and you can be added to their buyers list. Now, the biggest concern with this, if you're a new investor, is that you have to either have cash to buy the home, or you have to have a hard money loan. Hard money loan is basically just a private lender or privatized lending company. And they generally have less regulations, less oversight in terms of qualifications to get approved for the funds, because they usually base it on the asset itself, as well as, again, using that term again, ARV, what the home could be worth once fixed up or once remodeled. But the con, and the cash is quick, usually in less than 2 weeks, and they will fund your construction as well, your construction or rehab on the property, which is huge. The con is their interest rates, at least right now, in the time I'm recording this video, it's February 2026, they vary anywhere from 9% to 12%. Now, if you're a brand new investor, you've never got a hard money loan, you're probably going to be around 11 or 12% and about 2 points. 2 points are just finance charges. They charge you upfront when you do the loan. Sometimes they will do it at the end of the loan, but yeah, so it's just, 2 points is considered 2% of the loan that they're giving to you. So that's the 2 points. So that's the caveat, is that hard money loans are quick, they're easier to qualify for, and they will also fund your construction or renovation, but they do have much higher interest rates and fees comparatively to conventional financing. So those are the ways. Those are 2 ways. So again, on market through a network of agents, or through wholesalers. Now, you can also, on your own, do door knocking. Go door knock, try to find a seller who's looking to sell her home off market for cash or at a discounted price. or do something called seller financing. I'm not going to go into seller financing into this video. And I will create another video all on its own, because seller financing can get quite complex. But if you want to, you can go ahead and Google or research that term on your own time. But there will be a video specifically covering seller financing coming later. So you can do seller financing, you can do hard money, you can do cash, and then you can, again, door knock and try to find a person who owns a home. And maybe it's either older, like 70s or 80s or 90s, and outdated and just needs to be, improved, updated. Or maybe you find something that has deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance is basically like their trim is worn, maybe one of their windows is broken or is older, like the old metal windows before they switched over to vinyl. Maybe their roof has a bunch of moss on it and some damage. Again, siding damage. And then, if you go inside, maybe they have some other issues with, the flooring or soft floors in their bathrooms from water leaking and getting into their subfloor. I mean, there's a bunch of different things. So finding homes that have deferred maintenance or damage to the home where they need repair. And so you can buy that home at a discount, and you can do the repairs yourself, or you can do the repairs using your team or your network. And then you can get that extra equity out of the home through forced equity through the repairs. Okay. That's all the ones I'm going to go over today in terms of finding the home and ways to access and find a home. You can also do mailers. You can also do mailers. Mailers are good. Again, you target a list of, maybe pre-foreclosures or absentees or tired landlords. I'll show you how to do that in a later video. And then you send out a mailing list. Now, with mailing, it's important that if you really want to yield any type of result, there's a couple things you need to remember. One is you need to mail frequently. Okay. Two is you need to do consistently for a long period of time. And three, you need to do volume. So the lowest volume, if you're going to go down the mailing route, the lowest volume I would recommend is 1,000 mailers a month. Personally, if I was going to do that, I'd probably do at least 1,000 and maybe do it twice a month. Do one letter and one postcard. And I do it twice a month for at least 6 months, if not a year. And that will yield you the best results. Now, if you have more capital, again, you can scale from there. I'm just talking like getting started. But that's the entry level for mailing. Now, mailing, if even at 1,000 mailers, you're probably looking at, about 78 cents to 90 cents for the letter, per letter. So that's, times $1,000 or 1,000 mailers. It can be quite a bit, right? Times would be 98, like 780 to $900, let's just say, per batch of mailers. Now, if you do that twice a month, that's double that. So as you can see, it starts to add up quite a bit. Now, a postcard might only be anywhere from 50 to 64 cents. So now you're talking, $500 to $640 for the postcards. So if you're doing one of each, you're paying, let's just say $1,600 to $1,800 a month, just mailing 1,000 letters twice a month. Okay. And again, you want to continue that for a minimum of 6 months to see if you yield any results and get a return on your money, if you get one. So yeah, those are the different ways to source off-market properties and source on-market properties and to find your first deal. Now, let's go over something that I'm sure a lot of you really need to go over or want to go over is the numbers. So the numbers are generally a really easy way to do it. And this is not going to take a lot of time because it's quite simple. You calculate the after repair value, and there's different tools and ways to do that. One of the platforms that I will go on often is called LotSide. It's just lotside.com, and you enter the address in their search bar, and it will pull up, a whole bunch of information in terms of comparable homes. It will pull up a full calc sheet of numbers of like, okay, well, here's your financing, here's your taxes, here's your title and escrow, and here's your holding costs, and here's your selling costs, And here's where you enter your how much rehab it needs. Here's your purchase price, and then here's your net return, right? Your cash out, your profit, whatever you want to call it. Now, generally what we do is, ideally, you want to find a home that has, you take 75% of the ARV, not the current value, not the market value in its current condition. I'm talking about the ARV. So what it would be worth once renovated or improved, whatever you want to call it. So that's the highest value after repair, after rehab value, and you take 75% of that number, and then from that number you subtract however much rehab it needs. So again, I'm in the Seattle area in Washington State, and for us, cosmetic rehab that includes some trim, paint, flooring, maybe a bathroom remodel, and maybe some siding or other repairs throughout the home, maybe replacing a hot water tank, doing some other things like that, replacing the appliance, is going to run about $40,000 to $70,000, and that's still considered cosmetic. And again, we would include like landscaping and stuff like that too, and light fixtures. So that is what I would recommend for a person looking for their off-market property, for their first investment property, to look for. Why? Because it's the fastest, it's the easiest, and you can do what's called a flip on that property, and that's what you look for when you're looking for flips. Now, if you want to do what's called a buy and hold, which is a rental, you can, again, find a property. I would still recommend something that needs maybe a little bit of repairs. You can find the property below market value, again, on market or off market, and use traditional financing to finance it. You may have to put 20 to 25% down. So again, in order to buy these properties, you need to have capital. How much capital? Well, in today's economy, I would say bare minimum is going to be like, if you need to put 20% down on a property, and let's say the property in the low end is like $450,000 or $500,000, 10% would be $50,000, so 20% would be $100,000. So I would say, realistically, for most properties, again, this is for like King County, Snohomish County, the greater Seattle area, and Washington. I'm going to give you these numbers. Your area, if you're in San Francisco, the numbers are going to be much larger. If you're in New York, they're going to be larger. If you're in Tennessee, Alabama, in the Midwest, Texas, these numbers are going to be much lower. Okay, so I'm going to give you the numbers for Washington because that's where I live, that's where I invest, that's where I work, and I know these numbers very well. So again, you're going to have to research and do your own numbers. I can give you examples of some other areas here in a little bit, but basically you're going to need to find out the terms and what your numbers look like. Okay, so once you figure out, you find a property, you find your first property, and if you want to you determine for yourself, do I want to keep this as a rental or do I want to flip this, right? Which route do I want to go? And you're not really sure. That's step one. You got to, after you find a property, you negotiate property, you get a property under contract, you need to figure out, okay, well, what am I going to do? What strategy am I going to do? I need to close on the property, but then what am I going to do? If you're going to go the buy and hold route and rent it out, you can rent it out to traditional family. You can rent it out by the room. If your area will allow it, you could do what's called a STR or a short-term rental. Or if you have a background in medical and you're aware of a program called traveling nurses and you have connections in that field, or if you want to get into that field, again, I'm not going to go into that, but you'd have to do your own research. You could rent it out to corporate housing or traveling nurses. So the information I just provided there, those two items alone, is worth probably more than what you paid for this course. I'm being honest. Most people, when they look, and most people, they just think, oh, I got to rent this out to a family. So you're talking, maybe a couple and their kids and pets. Well, let me tell you something. Families with pets and kids do a lot of damage over time to rental properties. They do. And they don't mean to, but they live, a lot of families, some families live hard. So I mean, there's damage. There's, again, it depends on how many pets they have, how many kids they have. There's markings. There's, damaged flooring, damaged paint, damaged trim, bathrooms, damaged kitchens, ceilings, all sorts of stuff. They are often hard on properties. So instead, again, you have other strategies that I'm telling you about, and I'm going to go into again later in more depth in other videos. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to mention it. And those are, again, traditional rental to a family. You can buy a property, rent it by the room. You can rent it as a short-term rental. Again, if your area will allow that, and if you think it makes sense, you could do that. You could rent it and sign it up for corporate housing and see if you get approved. And you could rent it to traveling nurses. Again, sign up for their programs, register, and you're going to have to submit an application as to why you should be accepted as a house and part of the traveling nurses network of housing. And it's a whole process. I'm not going to go into it in this video, but that's another option. If you're going to flip it, you just got to work where you got to find a real estate agent. You need to find a lender that will either let you buy the home with traditional financing, with conventional loan, if it's in good enough condition. If it could be approved for a loan and an appraisal, then maybe that's an option to you. If not, then you're probably looking at cash or hard money. If you only have $100,000, let's say, or $70,000 or $120,000 or whatever it is, and you want to do a flip, that's okay, but you're probably going to have to do hard money because, again, depending on the condition of the property, it may not be able to be financed. It won't pass appraisal. So then you have to use cash or hard money. And again, a lot of people, some of you might have the cash, which is great. But if we're looking at, again, in Seattle area for a home that's at 475 or 450 or 500, you have to have all of that cash plus cash for the holding cost, or the cash for the construction, the cost of rehab, whatever it takes. Okay. So you got to have all of that cash. So it's a lot more. Instead, again, in real estate investing, we use a technique or strategy called leverage. Leverage, again, leveraging in a good way. Leveraging to maximize the dollar, and what's called max utilization of the dollar. Okay. So we are pushing the capabilities of each and every single dollar that we own to the maximum potential that we can. We're forcing equity in homes. We're forcing a return on investment beyond traditional either stocks or regular investings or savings or bonds or whatever else there is. Okay. So once you secure, that's how you find a property. Then now you figured out what strategy you're going to use, either rental or flip it. Now you've identified those. Well, if you're going to do a flip, you need to also find a reliable and highly rated, and you will need to interview several GCs, general contractors, and you will need a good agent to work with. Again, they're going to help you with a whole bunch of things like inspections. They can help you, title and escrow, make sure it's a clean title. They will list your property when you're done flipping it. And if you're an agent, that's great. Again, you save on the commission because you're the investor and you're also the agent. So it helps you if you're buying a property that's listed, and also it helps you when you go to list your own investment property, because you are the agent. So you don't have to, you got to save that money in commissions if you're an agent. If you're not, then you're going to have to find an agent. Don't get too picky with commissions. I know it's investment. I know it's about making a profit, but your number should be based off the deal, not penny pinching commissions. Most really good, successful agents that have a proven track record, super high reviews, and a lot of referrals are charging at least, especially in Seattle and Washington area, at least 2.5% commission on both sides. So you're talking 2.5% listing fee and 2.5% buyer broker fee. Okay. So be prepared to pay that along with excise tax, title and escrow fees, loan fees, all of those things. when you're selling the property. Okay, so you need to find a general contractor, you need to find an agent, and that's really all you need initially, because the general contractor is going to connect you to the various people, is going to help you with permits, is going to walk you through all of that, and you can be hands off. Okay, you get several estimates from different general contractors, and based upon reputation and your conversation, you want to interview them. And I'm also a general contractor, so I know this, and I have no problem with people interviewing me or asking me difficult questions. I'm very confident in my ability and my skill set and my team of subcontractors that I work with. And so I have no problem interviewing for a project. So moving on, once you have your team together, again, once you either if you're renting or if you're flipping, you just got to close. And again, if you're flipping, you're going to take care of all of that. If you're renting, you can hire a property manager or rent it out yourself, find your own tenants through the various ways that I told you could rent it out. And there you go. Congratulations. You just bought your first investment property. Now, again, in terms of if you're renting it, you're keeping it for a longer period of time, maybe doing some renovations as the tenants turn over. With rentals, you want to make sure that you're keeping up with inflation. With rentals, you want to keep up inflation. So inflation's 4%. That means technically every year you should be increasing rent 4 to 5%. If inflation's 12%, which it was, that means you need to increase rents by 12%, simply to match inflation. Okay? So you're preserving the dollar, you're preserving that rental value. We're not increasing it. I don't recommend, there's no need to increase rents beyond market value, whatever that is, because then you're going to have a hard time finding tenants. And you want a large volume of applications once you have a really good renovated property, because you want to pick the best tenants and you want to have a lot of good choices to choose from instead of kind of in the bottom of the barrel, right? So you're going to want to continue with the rental. Again, maybe hire a property manager if you don't want to put a bunch of time into it, a bunch of effort, because it does take a lot of work. If you're an agent, then you can property manage it. It's a little bit easier. You already have access to information and paperwork and tools and rental comps. So that's another advantage an agent would have. But again, you don't have to be an agent. Again, anybody can rent out a single property on their own. They don't need a property manager if you don't want one. So it's totally up to you. But you're going to want that, and you're going to want a handyman. You don't necessarily need a general contractor for rentals if you already do the rehab up front, or if it doesn't need a lot of rehab, if it's pretty what we call turnkey, move-in ready. You may not need a bunch of things, but you're going to want a handyman, because whenever somebody, especially if you're self-managing, if one of your tenant calls you on 9 o'clock on a Saturday and be like, hey, my tub is leaking everywhere, or the hot water tank's broke or is not working, or my dishwasher broke, you're going to need to you don't want to have to find one every time. You need to be able to just call or text your handyman and be like, hey, a tenant at my property here that you've been at before, that you service, is having this issue. Can you be there, depending on the severity of the situation, either tonight or tomorrow? And the guy would be like, yep. So you also need to interview some handymen or women, and you need to be able to make sure that their schedules are flexible and that if there is an emergency, they can get there. Now, again, if it's 2 a.m, then you just have to deal with it in the morning. But yeah, you want a handyman that and that you already have a relationship established with, that can get there as soon as they can. Again, if you're flipping, you just do the rehab up front with your vetted general contractor. They take care of all the stuff for you. They flip it, and then you have to handle staging, photography, and you hire an agent for that as well. Make them earn their commission, and they should take care of photography. They may or may not take care of staging. They should take care of the sign. They're going to do open houses, all the flyers, all the information, all the cards. They're going to take care of all of that, all posting it and exposure and marketing for your property. And then you're just going to sit back and wait for them to call you in to go sign some documents and collect a paycheck. Okay? Or get a wire transfer. All right. So that is how to source your first off-market property, what tools and information you need, what people or network or team of people that you would need, and then again, basic entry-level strategies of single-family rental, just rent it to a family, or flip it and using the flip method, right? Flipping the home, renovating the home, improving the home, and then selling it again. Hope you guys found this informational and you got some key terms in this video, as well as a free resource that is extremely useful, and I still use it to this day. All right, so next video is going to be Real Estate Investing 201.